Automation didn't increase conversions. Relevance did. Hello everyone, my name is Lucas and welcome to AnyBiz.io's YouTube channel. For a long time, personalization in sales was treated like an upgrade, something you add once the system is already working. A few custom lines, maybe some segmentation, and that was enough to stand out. Now that standard doesn't exist anymore. Buyers expect communications to reflect their situation, not just acknowledge their name or company. And when it doesn't, the reaction isn't neutral. It gets ignored. That's why AI started getting attention. Not because it sends faster, but because it can process more context than a human team can handle consistently. But there's a misunderstanding here. Most teams assume the advantage comes from automation alone, when in reality, automation without relevance just scales noise. Personalization is the real lever, not as a tactic, but as a way of deciding what should be said, to whom, and when. And when that piece is missing, no amount of activity fixes the outcome. The same way adjusting your thinking around personalization becomes necessary once the environment changes. Small signals like liking the video, subscribing, and ringing the bell should already be part of how you filter better ideas. Otherwise, it's easy to keep repeating the same patterns that don't move results. Because once you see personalization this way, the next question becomes unavoidable. Why do most systems still fail to deliver it consistently? The issue isn't effort, it's structure. Most sales and marketing systems were built around broad segments, not individuals. You group people by industry, company size, or role, and assume that's enough to make communication relevant. But behavior doesn't follow those categories cleanly. Two companies in the same industry can be at completely different stages. Two prospects with the same job title can have completely different priorities, and yet they receive nearly identical messaging. That gap is where conversations disappear. Not because the offer is wrong, but because the timing, context, or angle doesn't match the moment the buyer is in. So the message feels off, even if the product is relevant. This becomes even more visible in outbound. You're starting from zero, so you don't have existing trust to compensate for weak relevance. Every message has to justify itself immediately, which means personalization has to go deeper than surface level variables. And that's exactly where traditional personalization starts to collapse. It relies on static rules. It cannot adapt fast enough to how prospects actually behave. So the real problem isn't that teams don't personalize, it's that their system can sustain personalization at scale. Which raises the next question. What changes when personalization becomes dynamic instead of static? This is where AnyBiz.io changes the equation, because personalization stops being something you try to manually maintain and becomes something you structure properly from the start. Instead of relying on static segments or one-size messaging, you define how your outreach should behave, who you are targeting, what your offer is, and how your communication should feel across each channel. AnyBiz gives you the environment to do that clearly. You set tone of voice, messaging direction, personas, and sequences, and the system executes that consistently across email, LinkedIn, and calls. The personalization comes from how well the structure is defined, not from the tool making independent decisions. And this is where most teams actually gain leverage. Because instead of guessing what to change mid-campaign, you're looking at real signals, refining your inputs, and improving the system with intention. That process is supported directly by your CSM, who helps interpret what you're seeing and guides how to adjust your setup, so your outreach becomes sharper over time. At that point, personalization stops being something you try to add to your campaigns and becomes the way your campaigns are built from the ground up, which is what ultimately makes conversions more consistent instead of unpredictable. AI didn't change sales by making it faster. It changed it by making relevance scalable. And once relevance becomes consistent, conversions stop feeling unpredictable. Now, if you want to see how that kind of system works in practice for your business, you can book a one-on-one consultation with one of our specialists and see how an AnyBiz AI sales agent adapts outreach in real scenarios. And you're already ahead of most campaigns out there, still sending the same message to everyone and hoping for the best. This is usually where liking the video, subscribing, and ringing the bell stops being a YouTube habit and starts looking more like a filtering mechanism for not falling back into that pattern. That will do for today. Thank you so much for watching so far, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.